Hey y'all, welcome back to Black Coffee Conversations. I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Tanya.
And today we are talking about the F word.
Yes, we are.
We touched a little bit on it on another episode, and we just felt like we needed to come back and take a deeper dive into it as we've gone through our own journey with forgiveness.
Yes, and we even actually wanted to title this episode "Forgive Them or F Them," because let's be honest.
Yes.
Sometimes it's really tough to dig down and really forgive when you have been wronged.
Absolutely.
But we got to talk about our journey, because regardless, it is all about forgiveness in order to be able to move on with your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we talked about some things in terms of forgiveness, just requiring you to sort of release that person from the betrayal or the offense or whatever it is, even if you don't get an apology, even if they're out doing the same thing and they're not sorry.
And that's hard.
Yeah. Yes, but I think, what did we say? Forgiveness is really about yourself.
It is. It
and
is.
your wholeness.
That's right. It's about you, really not about them. Correct?
Yes.
And I think we talked a little bit about we can forgive them, and it just really helps us to release. It's really kind of a release. You know, when you don't forgive someone, you're holding on to anger, bitterness, and I mean, we know what that does to the inside. When you're holding on to all of that, when you're remembering and you're not forgetting everything that they said or did, you're not truly able to move forward. And you're hurting yourself.
And seasons, honestly, when I was in my unforgiveness, I was really operating in survival mode. I wasn't thriving.
Yes.
I was so attached to the emotions of the past that it inhibited me from growing into my future. And so as a result, I stayed in this stuck place of pain, and anyone that came that would mirror that or trigger me even a little bit, those same emotions will continue to emerge over and over again.
So it's hard to even get in another fulfilling, healthy relationship when you're still holding.
Yeah, because you're holding that person accountable and punishing them for what the last person did, or even for things that happened to you when you were a child that you never processed. So it's not always like a deliberate thing that's our fault. Sometimes it's deep in our subconscious. But I think that when we do get in relationships and people start to mirror our pain or trigger us in certain ways, it's important that we self-reflect and take inventory and become our own safe place. And our own safe place is not holding on to bitterness.
That's right.
It's uprooting all of those things that are keeping us stuck.
And we always kind of go to the scripture where we wrestle not against flesh.
Yes.
And so I have to think about the people, if you live long enough, you're going to have to deal with forgiveness.
Yes.
Whether it's someone in an intimate relationship, family members, even on your job. Where people have done you wrong. But we have to remember, we don't wrestle against flesh. So, we've talked a lot about how hurt people. So the very people that are really doing those things to us are hurt themselves. So a lot of times we have to kind of look beyond the action. And I know that's hard to do when the action is done to you and it's hurtful. But a lot of times that person that is hurting you and that is wronging you, you better believe they've had some childhood trauma, some hurt, something, which is why they are the way that they are.
Absolutely. Right? And we can look beyond, but I think boundaries are critical. Sometimes it's understanding that the person you're dealing with doesn't have the capacity to show up for you in a healthy way. So even though you forgive them, you still set a boundary with them, and that's what wisdom teaches you, is where people need to be seated in your life. Some people can be in the VIP section, and some people need to be standing room only all the way in the back by the door, near the exit sign.
There you go, you're right.
And I am totally fine with that.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what, on the one of the episodes we also talked about, sometimes just like I talked a little bit about my previous marriage, which I had some physical and emotional abuse there done towards me. But we talked about, what about those that have experienced a loss to violence, to gun violence, maybe police brutality, something that you feel like it's just where there's that loss and you can't bring that person back.
Yeah.
How do you forgive there? And that was something that I just was like, I can forgive. I've been able to forgive my ex-husband for those things, and I've been able to move past that. But wow, if something were to happen,
right,
to that
and I'm
degree.
sure it's a process. I'm sure it's day by day, bite by bite, and then there are going to be times where the pain does bubble up, the resentment, the anger, the grief, and even rage. You might have thoughts of murderous thoughts even. But it's recognizing that you have to also be patient with yourself in those moments. You can't self-abandon. You have to be with yourself, feel your feelings, and continue to go through that process of forgiveness.
And we talked about that really, the process of forgiveness, it really is a journey. It's not anything that's going to happen immediately. It takes time to be able to do that.
But I think when you do get to a place where you are more stable and steady in it through repetition, it frees up that energetic block where you can attract a healthier experience. Because I don't think that you can have a healthy experience if you bring all of that into the next moment with you. You're basically rooted in your past. It's a stronghold. So until you release it, you cannot free up to have a better future for
yourself. And if you think about it, that person really is still, they have a hold of you. You're still in that prison if you're holding on to that.
Absolutely.
And not dealing with it, processing it, unpacking it.
They might as well be living in your house.
Might as well be you might as well still be in a relationship with them.
Still laying down every night.
Exactly. If you don't find it in yourself to unpack, forgive, and release that and move on.
I had some things that I was holding on to. So my father passed away in 2012, and I was really bitter when he died because I just felt like such a sense of identity in being his daughter. I felt like, who am I now that I'm fatherless? What do I do in the world? And some things that I had unprocessed in my childhood, really started to manifest in my relationships. So it took for me to really go through that pain and those seasons. And once I did, I blamed him. I had a period, so I think forgiveness follows a formula. I think you have your time where you mad for real, and that's gotta be okay. And you can't just say I'm not mad or brush it under, because it's going to emerge at some point if you do that. So I said, Daddy, I'm mad at you. I'm mad at you for the ways that you didn't show up. I'm mad at you for the ways that I was not seen, that I wanted to be seen. I'm mad at the things that I wanted to express, that I felt fear that you would not accept in me. And then once I started to really process that anger and I was able to sort of let it go, it gave me a glimpse into his humanity and where he was as a person, and the things that maybe happened in my grandparents' home that made him the father that he was. And there was so much love and so much grace there at that point. And it's like now when I reflect on him, all I can see is him smiling at me. All I can see is all the times he was proud of me, all the times that he showed up and was so happy I was his daughter. And that became my new neuroplasticity. That became my new reality. So it really is a practice of thought, because it starts with our thinking. It starts with how we are framing those experiences. And it's on us. It's on us to reshape it.
Yes. Let's talk about, and I was really thinking about my dad, and because our fathers passed around the same time. For me, believe it or not, it is. Oh, and I do not want to get emotional, but I think you're always I always want just being able to hopefully that he is looking, down and seeing that I finally did it right. I will be honest, when I was in my relationship with my ex-husband, I remember when my dad came to me, which was just one of the many times I was packing up and moving out, moving back to a townhome that I had been leasing out, and I didn't have a tenant in there. And my dad looked at me and said, "He is not for you.
Yeah.
He does not love you."
Yes.
And
Whew.
whoo,
Daddy.
and my dad was the most positive
Yes.
person, and the type of person that didn't really, even though I felt like he was extroverted, he really wouldn't. He always kind of stood back and allowed us to live our lives.
Right.
We're adults. But when he said that at that moment, and as a man,
Yeah.
I just remember this is different,
Yeah.
for me. And so I carried that, and of course he passed away before he got to see
the realized
the realization that finally came to me. He is not.
Yes.
This person was not for me. My daddy saw it the whole time, but I think I know I was staying in the marriage, for my children. I wanted them to have the best
Yes.
of a 2-parent household, and I was willing to sacrifice my happiness so that they could have that. But I think one of the regrets, and I guess I don't know if we're really talking about regrets, but I hope my dad, and I know he does, that he sees that I listened to that and I held on to that all the way through the proceedings in the courthouse. My dad saw it, I felt it, and I just, I had to work on forgiving myself also for staying in that situation. That's something that has been a journey for me as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think sometimes, our parents plant seeds that are watered later. So I feel like he definitely was cultivating your garden for your future and where he knew you were going and your joy.
Yes.
And he knew that where you were was not where you were going to stay.
Exactly.
My dad said something to me. He was like, and this was a week before he died. He said, "You are one of the most brilliant people I have ever met in my life, but I always felt like you didn't apply yourself." And so then he died, and I thought, what was I supposed to do? Cure cancer? Like, what did you want from me?
Yeah.
But it was just a seed, and he knew that I had the ability to water it. He knew that I would sit with it. He knew that it would germinate and grow into something beautiful. So I always keep that with me, because it's just that little push I need sometimes. And it's like my daddy's still there pushing me, So, yeah, I think that is beautiful what your dad shared. And it probably helped you to realize that you were worthy of a lot more than you were selling for.
It did, because like I said, he was a man. Although he was just definitely very extroverted, did not meet a stranger. Rarely did he really kind of interject into our personal lives. He allowed us to do that, and I respected him so much for that. But that day just continues, almost like it was yesterday. I remember he looked at me as if, "You deserve so much better."
Yeah.
And this person, as a man, I'm coming to you as your father, but also as a man, because men know how men act and how men are, just like we are able to relate to women. And he knew that he would never, be the husband that I needed him to be.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I think that sometimes those little pushes can help us forgive ourselves too.
Yes.
Just knowing that, he saw so much better for you, because I think unforgiveness really, it can get really calcified in your body. I know that, and I don't mind to share this, I struggled with fibroids for a season of my life. And on an energetic level, and I don't know how this got deposited in my spirit, I honestly felt like it was my unforgiveness. I felt that it was unbirthed potentials that I did not birth that got calcified in my body and stuck in there. and I was carrying them around, and they were like parasitic. And just energetically, I feel like bitterness and unforgiveness is that. So when you let those things go, I mean, you really, until you let them go, you can't have another storyline. You can't have another future to emerge. You really stay stuck.
Yeah, and I will say this too. You know, going through my divorce, and especially when you have children, the importance of forgiving my ex was more than just for me. It was also for my children.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, like I said, we had a very toxic marriage. I mean, I've been divorced now 5 years, and I will tell you, one of the best things that's going on now, and that I talk when I think about forgiveness, and I really have forgiven my ex-husband. We have a group, just simple things like we have a group text with me, my ex-husband, you know, the twins, and then even, of course, my older daughter. We're all on there.
Yeah.
And just the laughs and the laughter
Yeah.
of us being able to go back and forth, and our kids being able to see that positive relationship. They know that we'll never get back together.
Right.
They know the toxic relationship that we had. But to be able to not have to, because I think, you know, when you think about things from a child's perspective, you feel like sometimes you have to pick sides. But I see the joy when they are able to laugh at some of the group text messages going back and forth. The fact that even though we're divorced, we're now on a side where we get along.
Yeah.
You know, and we're able to laugh, and I'm able to say Happy Father's Day. You know, you're a great dad, and he's able to say the same to me. That means something to them. It plays such a positive, it does a lot for our children. So I think, you know, when I forgave him, it just really completely healed, did a lot of healing for all of us.
For your whole
For the whole
family.
family.
That's
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. I think even in our leadership walks,
Oh my
and
goodness, yes.
as we deal with people who offend us on the job and
Yes.
in the world,
Yes.
I've learned that if I face an offense or someone makes a little dig or is disrespectful, if you kind of shorten the refractory period, you're gonna feel what you feel.
Yeah.
Just feel it and then let it go. Give yourself 5 minutes.
Right.
Give yourself a moment.
Don't hit send.
Don't hit send.
Don't hit send on the
And
email.
when you type that email, it's got that little tone in it.
Walk away.
You know,
yeah.
walk away, come back to it
Yes.
after lunch.
Yeah.
Eat you a sandwich. Come back to it after lunch, read it again, and then take some of that bite out of it. Because when you respond in that way, you pour gasoline on the fire, and you keep feeding into the energy that's going to eventually continue to trigger you over and over again. But you have the power to pump your brakes.
You do.
And create a new reality.
And that's just emotions. I mean, that's part of who we are as humans. Those emotions rise when you feel attacked, when you feel like, you know.
I used to cuss my boyfriends out.
Did you really?
Yes, I used to be little pop off. I used to go off. And it used to be very rewarding for me because I was cute, I was spoiled, I could get away with it. But it was so toxic for me to always be in that fight or flight and survival cortisol moment that I was like, this is not a good relationship.
Right.
And it was so opposite from how I grew up, you know, but
and I'm the one that holds it in. You know, we talked about that. I mean, I was kind of like the people pleaser. I don't really like conflict, so I'm the type to hold things in. But when that, you know,
now you're gonna go
when
left
you attack,
on you,
right? When you attack, you know, when you get there, you know, and I've about had enough, then it's
that's scary.
That's
the
very
quiet
scary.
ones
It's
when they
coming,
get there,
coming
it's
out.
real
Yes.
scary.
Yeah. But you know, forgiveness is really, I think about so many people that hold on to everything that's going on internally. You know, so we talk about how that really does take its toll on our physical and our mental.
Absolutely.
So when we're holding on to, think about all of that bitterness, all of that anger that you're just carrying day in and day out. That's taking its toll on you physically and mentally.
So,
And
what do you think? If you forgive somebody, do you have to tell them you forgive them? Do you have to tell them? Do you have to physically go to them and say, I forgive you?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I don't think that I even did that with my ex. I think I probably did say that, but I think it's more of an action.
And I can see why you would in that situation.
Yes. But I think, isn't it more of an action anyway? Forgiveness is more of how you respond and how you maybe interact with that person versus just saying it. Do you have to say? That's a good question. I don't necessarily think you do, because there are some people that I have worked with, okay, that really wronged me.
Yes.
And so sometimes I think that forgiveness is because God knows your feelings, He knows your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes and I never even saw them again.
Yeah.
So I would never even have to say that. I think forgiveness is more about with you.
Yes.
Right? It's more you.
That's how I
versus
feel.
that person.
Absolutely. I think it's just a clearing of that energetic core.
Yes.
Like, you release them into their destiny. They
That's
are
right.
who they are. Right. They show you who they are. Believe them.
Yes.
They are who they are.
Yes.
That may be that person's character. They may go out and do it to somebody else.
Right.
But you release yourself from the energy that emotion evokes within you. So you're no longer tied to them. And they may have consequences down the road.
Exactly.
You know, somebody brother might hit them down the road, or whatever the case may be, whatever it is. But it's really none of my business, and I don't really care at that point. I release them into their destiny, but I still forgive them, and they're no longer part of my experience of life and who I am. So, yeah, I don't think you have to tell them. I think that if someone comes to you and seeks forgiveness, like in situations where people have committed crimes,
right,
and maybe they really do feel sorry. Maybe they really, are seeking the forgiveness of the families or the people that they've wronged. I don't know.
And I think, forgiveness is so powerful.
It is.
Because
it's everything.
It's everything. And it's really how we're able to even move on in our lives. I mean, I can't imagine holding on and holding grudges to people that have wronged me throughout my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have a miserable life if I
Absolutely.
never was able to forget and move on. But there are people out there that really find it difficult to do that.
They do.
They feel like, hey, I'm going to say, hey, this is what they did, and I'm not forgiving that person for what they did.
Yeah.
What would you kind of tell them? Like, what? Because it's so hard, because I know so many people have been wrong. We all have,
And I think at the seat of that sometimes is judgment. I think sometimes we have to look at how we are judging other people in situations. And sometimes our judgments are so fixed and so firm that we feel like it's nonsensical for us to forgive an offense that's so opposed to how we judge a situation. But, I mean, and that's not healthy. That ruins so many relationships. It ruins marriages. When you start to judge your partner, you can't forgive them because you're so rooted in your judgment that you can never see their perspective. You can never get past the block of your own judgments. So I think that's something to think about when it comes to sort of moving on from those situations.
Right. And then you never can have, I mean, you can
Do we
never
forgive R. Kelly? I'm still listening to his music. I mean, I'm sure he did some stuff, but
I mean, the
seems
people
like
that
reggae is still my song.
I know, and that's the other. There are some people that just do not listen. I mean, the man was talented, but he had some true issues.
And it happened to him as a child.
And it happened to him. Exactly.
It did.
Exactly. And there are people that will say, just even when I think about my ex, and we talk about childhood trauma, we talk about hurt people. But sometimes we're like, hey, you're grown now. It seems like if you were hurt, you would do the total opposite. So sometimes people just want the payback. They want to make sure that person gets payback for what they did.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit up there and forgive. They want karma.
They do.
They want something to, them to have some type of punishment for the wrong that they have done.
And that's really the ego and not the spirit.
Yes,
and that's why we say we wrestle not with flesh and blood. Because if you look at a person through the eyes of spirit, you realize that God is working with all of us. We all have different contexts. We all have different, I don't want to say, demons even that we are battling against. Yes. So,
and I think you just said something. It's really looking at it from a spiritual lens. You know, and I always say when Jesus was on that cross, you know, and had been betrayed and had been beaten and tortured, he still said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He still found it in himself to forgive. If Jesus can forgive at that moment, like I'm like, how dare I sit up there and not be able to forgive, you know, my brother for doing this or my sister for doing this? Like we always try to be Christ-like, and it can be it's tough. It's tough, but to be Christ-like and to be like Jesus, to be close to him and to do things that makes him, that's pleasing to him. We have to be able to find that and say, you know what? We don't wrestle against flesh. I'm going to forgive this person. And so it's difficult, but I look at it through that lens.
And I always see this meme that says, learn to distinguish the difference between your Peter and your Judas. One had a bad day and one had a bad heart. Okay. But I would argue that they were both the same. They both had a bad day. Judas had a role to perform in getting Christ to the cross.
He did.
He played his part.
I
mean,
it's
so no one is beyond forgiveness.
Interesting.
It is interesting. It really is.
So I'm wondering though, how do we?
He ain't coming to my house for dinner though.
He's like,
maybe I'm not fully surrendered yet. I don't know, but I'm not watching Judas feet. He ain't coming to my house for dinner.
Right? Those are the boundaries, right? Is that what we said? Right, I'm with you. But there are some people that would.
There are.
God
might ask me to feed him one day.
Right.
I'm gonna struggle with it. I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna struggle.
Yes, exactly. So what is a takeaway? I think that, you know, for me, the takeaway is really to think about, is to kind of reflect on things that you've been through in your life, people maybe that you have not been able to forgive. And really reflecting on that, and really reflecting on, if you have not forgiven someone, how are you feeling now in your life? And
it could be things that your grandma said to you. It could be even little micro offenses that have shaped your sense of worthiness, that triggered a sense of shame in you that you still held on to. And when those things emerge, because they're going to get triggered again from other people over and over again, you really have to dig deep to self-reflect. Sometimes it takes meditation. You have to sit with it. You can't distract yourself with drugs, alcohol, you know, all the things. You really have to sit with it. And then the forgiveness happens, but it is for you. It's not about forgiving your grandma.
And that's what I would say. It is about you, and it is about you being able to move forward with your life. Is it hard? Yes, it is. You know, is it still hard for me sometimes when different things happen? But I think you end up growing and you realize that forgiveness really is so much about you. And it's also about being Christ-like and being pleasing to God. And it just makes your life so much better.
And when you get into that space of wisdom, you will literally take off like a rocket. You'll have more joy. You'll have better relationships. You will feel better within yourself, your health, your skin. Everything will just be better. Yes.
And we're going to also put up some books at the end on one of our previous guests that talked about unconditional forgiveness. Not unconditional love, but unconditional forgiveness, which means forgiving
no matter what. Yeah.
So we're going to put that book up. Hey, we're kind of coming to an end. Please remember to like, to subscribe, share,
tell a friend, comment. We love your comments. We love to interact with you all, so please give us feedback. We can't wait for it.
We'll see you next time.